So much like we did for the Iron Storm Spearhead, today we are diving back into the Marines with one of their other very strong competitive detachments, and that is the Firestorm Assault Force. This one is slightly less vehicle focused and more move in, get into the enemy's face, and then just blow them away with overwhelming firepower. The name gives it a theme of the old Salamanders focus on Flamers and Melta, and whilst both of those weapon types are good in this detachment, the detachment definitely isn't just for fans of those guns, and in fact basically any ranged weapon will get much better in the Firestorm Assault Force. The Detachment Rule is close range eradication, so you can already tell what this is going to be all about. And what it does is that not only do all of your ranged weapons gain the assault ability, which all by itself is a fantastic buff, it means you can essentially add d6 inches of movement to basically every single unit in your army and still get all of their usual shooting, which is just incredibly strong for mission play, being able to move onto objectives, get your units into range, avoid enemies and still shoot. It is just all around a super strong buff. But on top of that, all weapons shooting at an enemy within 12 inches also get +1 strength. So that is strength 5 bolters, strength 10 melters, strength 13 las cannons. It really does let you hit a huge number of breakpoints. And I mean, yes, sure, it isn't all that likely that your las cannons are going to be within 12 inches for much of the game. They certainly can be for at least a few turns, and if an enemy knight is stomping your way, when they get too close, your las cannons will be strength 13, and they'll be wounding that knight on 3s rather than 4s, which could make your opponent much more wary about getting in too close for a charge. It is just all round an incredibly strong detachment rule, I think. I would say it is at least on a par with the Iron Storm and just gives you as an army so much more mobility and damage output. You can be absolutely the undisputed king of the midboard with this detachment. You can get into the midfield before your enemy thanks to your no downside advances and still shoot, and then when you are there, you can just dare your opponent to get within 12 inches of you so you can unleash a load of firepower into them, quite often at essentially the equivalent of +1 to wound. Of course, a detachment isn't anything without its unique stratagems and enhancements, and naturally, the Firestorm Assault Force does have its own mix of these. The enhancements are, I would say, unfortunately, rather more self-buffing than unit buffing, which does, to me, make them a little bit less exciting overall. You can boost your character's strength in melee with the War-Tempered Artifice, which gives you +3 strength to a melee weapon. This is admittedly rather good on a beatstick character, with something like a Thunderhammer or a Power Fist. Or instead you can make them incredibly tanky with the Adamantine Mantle, giving them -1 to incoming damage for 20 points, but also getting a boost further against Melta and Torrent weapons, where it just flat out reduces them to damage 1. So all of those melters and thermal spears and thermal cannons, they won't be insta-killing your guys anymore with d6 +4 damage or something. Instead, it will just be a flat 1. I would say my favourite of the enhancements, however, is Forged in Battle. This is, in my opinion, brilliant on characters that are joining things like Terminators. It's 15 points and it lets you, once per turn, after making a hit roll or a saving throw for the unit, change one of the results to a 6. So your 2-up save, 4-up invuln Terminators now get an extra bit of durability, essentially having one auto 6 result per turn. And that may not sound like too much, but it really can save your bacon against big, high AP weapons that get through your armor save and push you to that invuln, or alternatively, against that mass, low or no AP firepower. When you roll that unlucky 1, you can then change that to a 6, so when you are forced to make 10 2-up saves and you just fail one of them, you can fix that and massively frustrate any opponent that is trying to just drown your unit in saves. It is genuinely really good for 15 points, and if I was bringing Terminators or Aggressors or anything that's slightly tanky and joining a character to them, I would probably be bringing this every single game. On the stratagem front, we again have Armor of Contempt, which can tally in very well with the Forged in Battle enhancement above, but in terms of unique stuff, you can get devastating wounds on your flamers and torrent weapons with immolation protocols, which is very strong. It is a hefty 2 CP, but on things like Infernus Marines, you can be chucking out 10d6 shots, getting devastating wounds on them, meaning you can put on average like 6 unsavable wounds onto an enemy unit alone, not counting any extra normal wounds that they get through from the normal wound rolls. Crucible of Battle can give you +1 to wound in the shooting or fight phase, which is potentially great with your Detachment Rule, meaning things like your Melta can go to strength 10, so they're now wounding toughness 9 vehicles on 3s, and then with this stratagem you can get them to be wounding on 2s, so it can combo very, very well and make it significantly easier to get your wounds through onto tough enemies. Another strat I really like in this list is Burning Vengeance. This one is just awesome, I love it. For 1 CP in your opponent's shooting phase, after an enemy unit has shot, if they targeted one of your transports, your embarked squad on that transport can get out and shoot into that enemy unit. So if your opponent was trying to take out an impulsor with some Hellblasters in, you can pop them out, throw some plasma into the enemy's face for the trouble, and hopefully try and kill them off or at least do a load of damage to them. It's just super fun, and with the right unit in the right circumstances, can be quite devastating. Of course, it does leave your squad potentially exposed to other shooting from your opponents if you get out too soon, but it can still be worth it in the right moment, and if you manage to wipe out an enemy squad in their own shooting phase, that's always a win in my book. We also get access to Rapid Embarkation, which is a nice way to keep a unit safe. At the end of the fight phase, you can choose an infantry unit within 6 inches of a transport, and they can embark on it. It's just a nice way to potentially chuck a squad inside to get some relative safety if you are going into your opponent's turn and you are worried that they're going to be taking a load of fire or maybe at risk of being charged or something. You may feel that your Terminators will be much safer inside that Land Raider that's nearby instead of out in the open. So all in all, I would say there are some okay enhancements, but some very solid stratagems, and that is all backed up by an incredibly strong Detachment Rule. But of course, in this video, we are looking at some of the best units to bring in this detachment, and which will make the most out of those enhancements and abilities. And first up, we have a unit that really does massively benefit from the Detachment Rule, which is the Eradicators. These boys are 95 points for 3, although it is worth bearing in mind there is a balanced data slate due this month, I think, for 40k, so this could well change fairly imminently, but for now, they are 95 points for 3, and that gets you 9 wounds at toughness 6 and a 3-up save. They only have a 5-inch move, but of course getting assault on their guns means they now have a 6 to 11-inch move and they can still fire, and with 18 inches on their Melta rifles, they can usually reach out and touch someone pretty much from turn 1. They also of course massively benefit when they're within 12 inches. Close range eradication bumps that Melta up to strength 10 and will make a huge difference if you are going into all the toughness 9 vehicles and monsters that are out there. It is basically +1 to wound in that situation, and then with their own total obliteration rule, it means you can be hitting on 3s, re-rolling everything, wounding on 3s, re-rolling everything, and then re-rolling that d6 or d6 +2 damage as well. So they just totally get round 2 of their big weaknesses, which is poor movement and the somewhat low strength on Melta in 10th edition, and with things like the Crucible of Battle, they can just do an ungodly amount of damage to enemy vehicles. Anything that is a transport is also very, very good in this detachment, with its strong focus on embarking and disembarking, and giving assault to all your ranged weapons gets around a lot of transport's issues, which is not wanting to advance because you still want to shoot your guns. Now you can advance to get the most out of their movement and still fire all of your weapons, and one that fits in quite well from both a rules and a fluff perspective is the Land Raider Redeemer. This is a fairly hefty 260 points, but it is very, very durable thanks to that toughness 12, 16 wounds and a 2-up save, and with a 12-inch move and assault on all its weapons now, you can get into range with its main guns, the Flamestorm cannons, very quickly indeed, and they are very, very good when they're firing. With 2 of them on the chassis, you are getting 2d6 plus 6 shots that are auto-hitting thanks to Torrent, and will be strength 7, -2 AP and 2 damage thanks to that +1 strength. So they are a good profile. There isn't a huge amount where that bump from strength 6 to 7 will make a big difference. It's not a massively key break point, but against Gravis units, Death Shroud Terminators, Wraithguard, Squighog Boys, Custodes, Canoptech Wraiths, all of those are either toughness 6 or toughness 7. So the bump will make a difference in your wound roll, and so it will have an effect against most armies. And with -2 AP and 2 damage, it does have a genuinely solid profile for killing off a lot of stuff. The Redeemer is of course fantastic for things like the Immolation Protocol stratagem. Giving all of those torrent attacks devastating wounds means that from your 2d6 plus 6 shots, you can expect at least 2 or 3 of them to be completely unsavable, which means if nothing else, you will easily with this wipe out a couple of extra Marines or kill a couple of extra Custodes or Aggressors as you fire into them. It is just all round a solid vehicle for this detachment, and not to mention, it also has dev wounds from the assault cannons, plus it can also take a multi-melter, a missile launcher and a stormbolter for even more shots that will benefit from that +1 strength as well. Of course, on top of that, it can also take a unit inside, and with the brilliant assault ramp rule, things like Terminators will be able to get out and charge. It's worth noting that you can't advance and still use this, so the detachment advance and still shoot rule won't come into effect if you want to get something out and charge from it, but still you can make a normal move, not advance, and then get something out and charge it, and then still be speeding around the board in later turns, advancing with this thing and shooting into enemy squads and getting quite a lot of damage into them as the game goes on. So I think a Land Raider Redeemer with a big squad of Terminators is a very good pick for this detachment. Or of course, now that we're in 10th edition, Gravis units can go in Land Raiders too, which is really good, because another thing you may want to fill this thing with is the next unit on our list, which is the Aggressors. Like the Eradicators, this is another Gravis unit. This time I'm going with the Flamestorm Gauntlet version, although it is worth noting the Boltstorm loadout is still pretty good in this detachment. I just think the Flamestorm is better. You again get the benefit of being able to advance and still shoot with no worries, and with a 12-inch range you will basically be always getting +1 strength thanks to the detachment, and also you will always be getting a pip of AP thanks to the Aggressor's Close Quarters Firepower rule. So a unit of 6 of these, which will set you back 220 points, nets you 18 toughness 6 wounds with a 3-up save. They can run up, or advance up should I say, flame the enemy with d6 +1 auto hitting shots each, with twin linked and ignores cover, so it will all be at strength 5, -1 AP and 1 damage. So for 220 points, that is definitely not bad at all. The Twin Linked is great again with the Immolation Protocol stratagem, letting you fish for those devastating wounds as much as possible, and a squad of 6 firing into something like a squad of Marines will, on average, assuming you reroll to get the devastating wounds, get around 14 wounds into a squad, so you can wipe out 7 Marines in one volley, or against tougher targets, put a chunk of 8 or 9 wounds through their saves and invulnerables, thanks to devastating wounds. They are just, again, very good in this detachment because it really does help them get around their big weakness, which is slow movement and quite weak guns. They get the +1 strength and they get to advance and still shoot, which really does help them just perform much better. They are even fairly decent in melee if they get caught there, thanks to their twin linked power fists. They really do just do well all round in this detachment, and get even better if you join a character to them. You can give them some extra protection thanks to that Forged in Battle enhancement, or if you are willing to go with sort of other named characters, Ironfather Pharos joins them and can give them a 5-up Feel No Pain, which makes them super tanky and gives them a solid bit of extra shooting and melee power for just 95 points. In spot number 4, we actually go to another named character. Vulcan Hestan is incredibly strong in the Firestorm Assault Force. He is a nice cheap 100 points, and not only does he have an alright profile himself, he's got 6 strength 6, -2 AP, 2 damage attacks in melee thanks to his Spear of Vulcan, and then also his Gauntlet of the Forge is strength 6, -1 AP, 1 damage with d6 +3 shots and a torrent. So again, this is going to be strength 7 in the detachment, and also again potentially comboing really well with that Immolation Protocol stratagem. He can of course join Infernus squads, so if you are bringing them, he is a brilliant pick for joining them, just adding even more flamer goodness to the mix. And then on top of that, he also has some excellent rules for helping you play the objective game. Seeker of the Lost Relics allows you to choose an objective marker, and while he is in range of it, not only is he OC 10 and have a 5-up leadership, but he also has a 4-up Feel No Pain. So he really can just sit on an objective you choose and keep it pretty much all game long if he needs to. And then in terms of what else he brings army-wide, he has a great buff in Forge Father. This lets him choose an enemy unit within 24 inches in your shooting phase, and until the end of the phase, all of your weapons that have Torrent or Melta get to re-roll their wound rolls. Now, this is only okay in sort of more all-round lists, where you may have a few bits of Melta here and there, but in this detachment, where you can quite easily and be incentivized to bring a lot of Torrent or Melta, this combos insanely well. All of your Infernus Marines, your Eradicators, your multi-melted Devastators, all your tanks with pintle-mounted melters, they all get to re-roll those wound rolls. So this is a absolutely monumental level of force multiplication, and for 100 points, I think he is just a genuinely brilliant addition to a Firestorm Assault Force, especially if you are building a list that does go heavy on Torrent and Melta weapons. Finally, I think there's another transport that definitely warrants thinking about, and that is the Impulsor. This baby just again seems tailor-made for this detachment, perhaps even more than Land Raiders. It's 80 points and is solidly durable at toughness 9 with 11 wounds and a 3-up save. You can potentially get it a 5-up invuln as well if you take the Shield Dome. It also has a, let's be honest, token amount of shooting with some anti-infantry guns in the Storm Bolters and the Heavy Stubbers, but you can boost it around with things like the Missile Array that gives you a few extra nice high strength shots, or the Iron Hail Sky Talon Array if you know you're going to be going up against a lot of flying enemies. I think overall I would probably stick with the Missile Array just for the potential extra damage from the crack with its D6 damage, but where the Impulsor really shines is that it has Firing Deck 6, so you can move this thing up really fast, moving 12 inches and still advancing D6, and then you can still shoot with 6 Hellblasters or 6 Infernus Marines or even 6 Desolation Marines if you really felt like doing something crazy. It is just very easy with this vehicle to get within 12 inches for that extra strength, and it can bump your Infernus Flamers up to strength 5 or your Hellblasters potentially to strength 9, meaning you can actually do a significant amount of damage with them now. The Impulsor also has a really nice rule where you can advance it and squads can still disembark and shoot. They can't declare a charge, but that's fine. You can potentially move this thing up to 18 inches, disembark your squads, and then shoot into an enemy to kill a few off and maybe even steal their objective. It also combos really well with things like the Burning Vengeance stratagem, as I mentioned earlier, letting your opponent shoot your Impulsor, then your Hellblasters can simply step out and shoot at the enemy squad, try and kill them off that was shooting at you. All round, it's just a very mobile, very reliable transport that can put out a solid amount of shooting thanks to its embarked squads, and it just works very, very well with the playstyle that the Firestorm Assault Force tends to veer towards. So that is it. 5 units that I would at least be considering if I was playing a Firestorm Assault Force. There are of course plenty of other units you could choose. Terminators, Infernus Marines, even things like their Gladiator Valiant are all very, very strong in this detachment, but the 5 that I mentioned above are ones that I personally would seriously be looking at first. But as always, I'd really love to know what your thoughts are. What do you make of the detachment as a whole, and which units do you tend to bring if you are running it? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later guys.